The chitin hall of the Cathar hegemony was not merely a chamber of state. It was a sensory paradox, a cavernous, bioluminescent void where the silence of political gravity was deafeningly amplified, and the crystalline air thrummed with the subsonic pulse of a million aggregated minds focused upon a single, impossible void in the tactical projection. Hegemon K. Artak, whose carapace of office was a mosaic of scar tissue and polished obsidian, stood before the central hololithic emitter, his multifaceted primary eyes locked onto the ghost image. It was an absence, a null data signature that spoke more loudly than the combined military census of the entire sector. A significant portion of the most virulent aggressor fleet known to border space, the Virulent Scourge, a collection of marauding vessels whose sole strategic principle was entropic chaos and relentless, brutal piracy, had in a single unquantifiable moment of spacetime ceased to exist on the sensor matrix. Not a ripple of exotic energy, not the spectral echo of weapon discharge, not the residual thermal shadow of a warp core detonation. Nothing. The tracking data simply concluded, mid-vector, precisely at the edge of the uncharted zone, proximal to the system designated Sol, the home cradle of the species known colloquially, and with supreme institutionalized arrogance, as humans. Ambassador Rin, the hegemon's longtime political rival, and the only being present whose tertiary respiration tubes were not visibly constricted by the rising fear, articulated the immediate, terrifying conundrum from his elevated position within the diplomatic tier. His voice, modulated through the hegemony's resonant crystal speakers, possessed the unsettling calmness of a creature observing the decay of logic itself. Hegemon, the disappearance is statistically anomalous. Not merely unlikely, but geometrically impossible. A collective of vessels of that operational mass, even if they were to engage in a synchronized, localized self-immolation, would saturate the gravimetric and thermal bandwidths of the entire subsector. The Scourge did not merely suffer a defeat, they were excised. They evaporated into a clean, geometric zero point, precisely where our predictive models placed their vector of intrusion into the uncharted zone. This implies, with terrifying clarity, a kinetic event of such profound technological sophistication that it has no category within the combined theoretical physics of the hegemony, the coalition, or the border states. The possibility, which I raise not out of alarmism but out of intellectual duty, is that the Tier 4 species at the terminus of that vector, the humans, are involved. They are the only new variable. Strategos Kale, the embodiment of the hegemony's martial tradition, clad in the heavy, dark green armor of the fleet command, recoiled with a sound akin to grinding shale. His dismissal was immediate, born of centuries of established galactic hierarchy. Ambassador, your intellectual duty treads dangerously close to sedition. The humans are Tier 4. They are a primitive, protoplasmic species confined to a single orbital plane of their origin world, possessing rudimentary kinetic and low-level fusion technologies. Their deepest penetration into the void is barely beyond the local cluster of their star system. Our established and peer-reviewed xenological profile categorizes them as emotionally volatile, politically fractured, and strategically negligible. To suggest that this vast, dangerous aggressor fleet, which has evaded the combined navies of established galactic powers for half a cycle, was somehow neutralized by a species whose highest technological achievement is the unstable application of conventional explosives, is not merely illogical. It is an insult to the memory of our forces lost to the Scourge. The event must be a localized, natural spacetime fracture, or a pre-programmed technological self-destruct mechanism, triggered by a rival faction we have yet to identify. The hegemon's claws tapped once on the polished obsidian, the sound echoing through the vast space like a thunderclap. The tension was palpable, a dense metaphysical substance pressing down on all present. Silence! Strategos, your loyalty is noted, but your prejudice is a liability. Ambassador, your caution is noted, but your leap to the unknown is strategically irresponsible. The facts are elemental. A powerful and unpredictable force vanished cleanly at a designated coordinate. That coordinate is within the gravitational influence of a species we have ignored for too long because of the sheer weight of our own established certainty. We predicated their classification on their observable technology. But the central tenet of military intelligence is to account for the unobservable. The greatest weapon is not the one you see, but the one whose category you cannot conceive. If the humans are involved, their method violates all known physical laws of warfare. If they are not involved, Then a new, unseen power has manifested directly on our frontier, utilizing a technology that renders our entire naval doctrine instantly obsolete. The latter is a threat to the hegemony's survival. The former is a threat to the hegemony's understanding of the cosmos, which is, perhaps, a more profound danger. Artak turned to the command tier, his voice lowering to a glacial rasp. We shall test the hypothesis of the unknown. We will not commit a fleet. That is the strategy of the fearful and the unprepared. We will dispatch the Purity of Intent, a diplomatic exploration vessel equipped with the most sensitive deep space sensor arrays and protected by the most advanced stealth envelope. Its mission is to proceed to the Sol system. It will not engage. It will not threaten. It will simply observe and, if possible, initiate first contact protocol, seeking information on the location of the vanished aggressor fleet. They will present the inquiry as a matter of galactic law enforcement, nothing more. We will send the vessel of peace to gauge the measure of a potential adversary. We will observe the reaction of the humans. Do they panic? Do they mobilize their crude defenses? Do they attempt to obfuscate the truth with primitive lies? The human reaction to a polite, structured inquiry will tell us everything we need to know about the abyss of power they either possess or are unknowingly standing near. The decision was absolute, heavy with the implied risk of provoking an unknown, and the chamber fell into a deep, chilled silence, the scent of ozone and political fear permeating the atmosphere. The fate of the hegemony's immediate future was now riding on the perceived primitivism of a species they had previously dismissed as a biological curiosity. The void surrounding the Sol system was unsettling in its stillness. It was a silent, well-ordered space, a vacuum that felt less like the chaotic, unpredictable environment of raw nature and more like a carefully manicured garden. The Purity of Intent, cloaked in its shimmering distortion field, proceeded with a caution that bordered on paralyzing fear, its advanced sensor suites drinking in the environmental data. What they detected was a profound, unreadable anomaly. There were no detectable long-range warp signatures, no visible energy shields surrounding the central planet or its primary moon, and no evidence of the vast, decentralized, aggressive sensor webs that characterized all other Tier 4 or Tier 5 civilizations. Instead, there was an inexplicable, highly localized order. Gravimetric flux was precisely managed. Residual plasma fields from stellar wind interactions were contained and channeled. The debris field from the system's distant asteroid belt was not randomly scattered according to natural physics. It was arranged in geometric, non-Euclidean patterns that defied logical explanation, structures too subtle to be artificial but too ordered to be natural. Commander Zyler, the Cathar lead on the Purity of Intent mission, reported back to the hegemon's primary contact link. His voice was taut with a mixture of professional detachment and internal bewilderment. Hegemon, the observations contradict the established profile with absolute totality. We are detecting no crude, volatile energy signatures. There is no evidence of aggressive orbital platforms. The human homeworld, Earth, presents a low-energy signature consistent with a highly advanced, efficient power grid, yet its atmospheric integrity is anomalous. It is shielded, Hegemon, but not by a conventional energy field. We are detecting a layered, passive gravimetric stabilization field that appears to regulate all external and internal environmental stressors. It is not designed to stop an attack. It is designed to maintain a perfect, static environment. It suggests a civilization that has mastered the fundamental forces of physics not for warfare, but for profound, unchanging domestic serenity. This is not the profile of a fractured, volatile species. Before Zyler could continue, a proximity alert shrieked through the bridge, instantly overriding the static elegance of the Cathar's professional reserve. A vessel had emerged from the void, not through a conventional warp point tier, but through an instantaneous, silent materialization. It simply was. The Cathar sensors, despite their sophistication, could not detect the transitional energy, the subspace signature, or the gravimetric displacement associated with an FTL jump. One moment the space was empty, the next it was occupied by a singular, immense vessel. Its aesthetic was a radical departure from the hegemony's functional, weaponized designs. It was a thing of terrifying, monolithic stillness, a deep, matte black obelisk, angular and silent, reflecting no light, absorbing all attention. It possessed no visible weapon emplacements, no antennae, no maneuvering thrusters save for the faintest. Almost imperceptible blue glow at its posterior. The designation painted on its side, in stark, simple, universal script, was UNS Stasis. A communication hail arrived, bypassing all Cathar encryption and firewall protocols with the seamless ease of a key turning a lock. The Cathar had no choice but to accept. The image resolving on the bridge projection was a human male, rendered in excruciating high definition, a being of soft, pinkish organic matter wrapped in simple, dark cloth, possessing an unnervingly calm facial structure. This was Ambassador Elias Thorne, and his composure was an immediate psychological weapon more potent than any plasma cannon. His voice, translated into the Cathar primary language, was perfectly modulated, deep, and utterly devoid of fear, threat, or surprise. Greetings, this is Ambassador Elias Thorne of the Unified Earth Collective. We register the presence of your vessel, the purity of intent, and acknowledge your deep space reconnaissance array signature. Your current position transgresses our established system perimeter. This perimeter is passive, but its protocols are absolute. We regret the necessity of this direct intervention, but the Sol system is currently designated as a quarantine zone of essential stability. Your intention is not registered as aggressive, but your presence constitutes an instability. Please state your mission parameters with complete and precise candor, and be advised that any deviation from the truth will be instantly and empirically verified. Commander Zyler, momentarily stunned by the sheer, unblinking authority in the human's calm tone, managed to articulate the hegemon's formulated query. We are the Cathar hegemony, an established power in this sector. We are on a mission of galactic law enforcement. A substantial collection of dangerous aggressor vessels, designated the Virulent Scourge, was tracked to this region. Their tactical signature was abruptly and completely lost at the boundary of your system's influence. Our inquiry is simple, Ambassador Thorne. We seek their current status and location. If you have knowledge of the Scourge fleet, we demand an immediate accounting. Thorne did not blink. He did not shift his posture. He listened to the Cathar's declaration of law enforcement with a stillness that suggested the hegemony's definition of justice was quaint and irrelevant. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of a quiet, inevitable judgment. We are entirely aware of the vessels you reference. Their tactical designation, as you define it, is relevant only to the fleeting, violent chaos of your sector. For us, they represented an unacceptable entropy risk to the larger region of spacetime. Commander Zyler, the Scourge fleet was not defeated by a force of arms. They were not destroyed in a conventional conflict. They were neutralized and removed. You seek their current status and location. Their status is non-operational and thermodynamically inert. Their location is contained, stabilized, and designated for permanent, localized entropic isolation. In the common parlance of your people, they have vanished from your active spacetime. In the language of the Unified Earth Collective, they have been assigned to stasis containment. They pose no further threat to the galaxy. The reveal was a physical blow to Zyler's carefully constructed composure. He could only manage a single, desperate counter-question, his training overriding his terror. Contained? Isolated? By what means? We detected zero energy expenditure, zero gravimetric distortion. By what weapon was a fleet of that magnitude instantaneously neutralized? Thorne's expression shifted, not into anger or victory, but into a quiet, profound pity. Commander, this is the crux of your civilization's strategic limitation. You perceive all power through the lens of destruction. You are measuring an act of supreme environmental stability with the tools of chaotic warfare. The human secret is not a weapon, but a fundamental understanding of containment. We do not eliminate instability by applying greater force. We remove the instability from the active field of interaction entirely. The UNS Stasis and its sister vessels are not warships. They are instruments of environmental stabilization. We utilize a technology that isolates a discrete volumetric segment of spacetime, applies a nonviolent, hyperphase stabilization field to all contained matter, and then transitions that volume into an adjacent, localized, static reality. We do not destroy the aggressor. We merely remove their agency and their influence from the living, causal universe. The aggressor fleet you seek is functionally a permanent, stabilized exhibit in a museum of violent failure, existing in a pocket of spacetime adjacent to, but eternally separate from, our own. The vanishing was merely the side effect of a containment field being engaged. The sheer magnitude of the concept, not just advanced weaponry, but the mastery of reality separation, drew a curtain of total silence across the line. The Cathar had been searching for a hidden battleship. They had found a hidden principle of physics weaponized for peace. The arrogance of their former Tier 4 designation now felt like a dangerous, blinding hubris that had nearly cost them everything. Back in the Cathar Chiton Hall, the tension had transmuted into a cold, paralyzing terror. Hegemon Kartak stood rigid, absorbing the full transcript of Thorn's communication, the data projections of the UNS stasis, an image of calm, black finality, pulsing faintly in the void. Strategos Kale, his former martial bluster utterly stripped away, looked down at his own armored claws as if they were suddenly tools of Stone Age brutality. Ambassador Rin, however, had found a new, terrifying clarity, his respiration tubes expanding and contracting with steady, thoughtful rhythm. Hegemon, Rin began, his voice reverent and slow, the implications are staggering. This is not a military power, it is an existential arbitrator. The humans did not build a fleet to defend against the scourge. They built a technological capability to nullify the very principle of chaotic aggression in their vicinity. Our entire hegemony, built on the balance of force, the strategic application of violence, the threat of escalation, is in the face of this stasis containment principle rendered philosophically and practically irrelevant. We are a species of refined butchers arguing over the sharpest knife, while they have demonstrated the ability to simply remove the butcher, the knife, and the entire kitchen from the dimension where the argument is taking place. They are not merely calm, they are supremely logical. Their ethics are not derived from religious doctrine or social contract, but from a pragmatic principle, maximum stability with minimum entropic expenditure. To destroy the scourge would have wasted energy. To contain them is an act of ultimate efficiency. Kale, his voice a low, gravelly whisper, finally spoke, the admission of defeat heavy in the air. I dismissed them. We all dismissed them. We judged them by the noise of their earliest, most chaotic technological output. We saw their petty internal conflicts, their volatile political history, and we assigned them a low rating. We completely failed to account for the possibility of a species that, upon reaching a critical threshold of knowledge, would choose to apply that knowledge not for outward expansion and conquest, but for profound internal stability. They are not an emerging species, Hegemon. They are a fully evolved principle. The question is no longer how we defend against them, but how we petition them for a measured existence. Kartak turned from the projection, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the black image of the UNS stasis. The moment was the fulcrum of Cathar history, the sudden realization that they were no longer the apex predator, but a participant in a cosmic order defined by others. We must go to them, not a delegation of equals, but a mission of profound, honest supplication. We will not threaten, we will not debate. We will state the facts of our fear and the necessity of our continued stable existence within this sector. Ambassador Rin, you will lead the mission. You understand the philosophical chasm we must cross. Strategos Kale, you will accompany him not as a symbol of our military strength, but as a living testament to its limitations. We will offer them an alliance, not of shared power, but of shared burden. The humans spoke of entropy risk. I want to know the scope of that risk, and why they found it necessary to build a galactic prison in their backyard. The diplomatic exchange took place not in the cold, black geometry of the UNS stasis, but in a newly materialized human station orbiting Earth's third moon, a facility named the Aperture. The station was not built of metal and armor. It was constructed from a perfectly transparent, crystalline polymer that allowed the full, silent majesty of the Sol system to dominate the visual field. It was an environment designed for honesty, where every maneuver, every shift in posture was visible against the backdrop of the Earth. A vast, beautiful, swirling marble of blue and white, perfectly stable under its passive, layered shield. Ambassador Rin and Strategos Kale were ushered into a chamber where Ambassador Thorn awaited, flanked not by armed guards, but by two quiet, studious humans, a linguistic specialist and a physicist, their presence suggesting that the coming conversation would prioritize logic and data over politics and military posturing. The Cathar envoys, standing rigid in their heavy, ceremonial armor, felt impossibly clumsy and crude in this atmosphere of quiet, terrifying refinement. Rin began, dispensing with all Cathar diplomatic formalities, speaking with a directness born of utter necessity. Ambassad. Or Thorn, the Cathar hegemony offers a formal and unqualified apology for our prolonged dismissal of the unified Earth collective. Our Tier 4 assessment was a product of institutional arrogance and a profound failure to understand the true trajectory of logical technological evolution. We came seeking a missing aggressor fleet. We found a civilization that has mastered the physics of non-aggression and the ethics of ultimate stability. We are here to formalize an alliance, predicated on a unified front against the entropy that necessitated your stasis containment protocol. Thorn listened, his eyes calm, his expression neither triumphant nor forgiving, but analytically appreciative of the shift in Cathar perspective. Ambassador Rin, your candor is noted and appreciated. The error was not merely one of arrogance, but of philosophy. Your hegemony and many other civilizations in this region defines power by the capacity to enforce a will upon others through kinetic or energetic means. Humanity, having passed through its own prolonged, chaotic adolescence of internal conflict, learned a fundamental truth. Willpower enforced through aggression always generates equal and opposite instability. The Scourge fleet was an example of localized, metastatic instability. Allowing it to persist would have caused a cascade failure in regional equilibrium, drawing the attention of larger, more patient forces your current technological paradigm cannot even perceive, let alone resist. Strategos Kale, unable to maintain silence, stepped forward, his armored frame trembling slightly. Ambassador, we are not children. We understand threat. You speak of greater forces. What is the scope of this entropy risk? What is the magnitude of the larger conflict that necessitates a technological capacity that can instantly quarantine a collection of aggressor vessels? Thorn finally permitted a sigh, a faint exhalation that carried the weight of ages of terrifying, isolated knowledge. He gestured to the vast, crystalline vista of space, where the distant galaxy spun in its slow, silent dance. Strategos Kale, the Scourge was a symptom, a microscopic fever of the sector. The true, profound instability is the very fabric of existence in this reality. Do you truly believe, Kale, that the universal principles of physics, the speed of light, the limits of energy, the relentless, irreversible progression of entropy, are arbitrary limitations? They are not. They are the minimum necessary guardrails for a fragile, temporary reality designed to keep certain fundamental forces constrained. They are the locks on the doors of a prison designed to hold back a cosmic, inevitable decay. Thorn paused, letting the silence of the void speak for itself, then continued, his voice taking on the quality of a profound philosophical lecture. Humanity's shocking secret, the reason we are classified as calm, ethical, and logical, is not our stasis technology itself. The secret is that we possess a vast, deep archive knowledge that predates our recorded history, a knowledge of a great filter that is not military or biological but existential. We learned that the universe is not merely expanding. It is being stalked by a primal, patient, and utterly incomprehensible entity, a force we can only call the void patient, a being of such immense entropic density that its mere, slow, non-aggressive approach causes local spacetime to accelerate its decay toward total stillness. Every time a major civilization achieves FTL travel and engages in massive, sector-wide energy generation and warfare, it is, in effect, sending out a profound gravitational signature into the void, a beacon announcing an excess of usable energy, an invitation to the patient. Rin was paralyzed, the scale of the threat instantly rendering the hegemony's internal squabbles and military might into a meaningless speck of dust. The Scourge, they were attracting this attention. They were an unnecessary flare of energy and instability in a region that desperately needed to be silent, Thorn confirmed, his face grave. Our stasis technology was not developed for border defense. It was developed as a necessary ethical prevention system, a way to manage and permanently remove chaotic, energy-intensive forces without expending our own energy, thereby maintaining a local gravimetric silence. Earth and its sphere of influence were quietly converted into a regional cosmic sanctuary, a zone of absolute stability and minimal entropic cost. We do not fight the patient, we hide from it. The shocking secret is that we are not a rising power. We are a species that inherited the knowledge of the coming dark and chose to become the galaxy's silent, patient quarantine authority, preparing for the long, inevitable wait for the end of the local reality. The realization washed over Kale. The humans had been ethical and calm not out of moral superiority, but because their survival strategy demanded a ruthless, absolute efficiency of peace. Any internal conflict or external war would have been a direct threat to their entire, colossal, silent defense mechanism. Their logic was cold, terrifying, and absolutely necessary. What must we do? Rin asked, the plea stripped of all hegemony pride. Thorn nodded, a flicker of something akin to shared burden crossing his face. We share the truth and the burden. Your hegemony possesses vast, stable, deep void reserves. We need to begin the process of converting specific, strategically distant sectors into secondary quarantine zones, utilizing the Cathar's institutional stability and logistical capacity. The alliance is not for conquest, but for strategic retreat and systematic stabilization. The true power of the unified Earth Collective is not our stasis field. It is our capacity for cooperative, long-term, ethical planning when confronted by an insurmountable existential dread. The transfer of knowledge was a slow, agonizing process. The Cathar, accustomed to the brutal simplicity of kinetic energy transfer and plasma-based warfare, struggled to comprehend the elegant, counterintuitive physics of localized reality stabilization. Yet under the calm, relentless tutelage of human engineers and scientists, the hegemony began to shift its entire, vast industrial output away from war vessels and toward the monolithic, silent components required for the stasis architecture. The political and cultural transformation was seismic. The focus shifted from external conquest to internal refinement, from aggression to profound, sustainable efficiency. The fear of humanity was replaced by the terrifying, shared responsibility with humanity. Months stretched into measured cycles, and the combined human-Cathar operation began the painstaking conversion of a vast, uninhabited nebula on the frontier into the first Allied quarantine zone, a silent, vast web of energy sinks and stabilization anchors. The alliance was a model of philosophical synergy. The humans provided the ethical technology and the chilling foresight. The Cathar provided the immense, unyielding infrastructure and political stability to implement it across a massive scale. One cycle deep into the collaboration, as Hegemon K.R. himself oversaw the final, critical activation of the first new stasis anchor, a profound, chilling silence fell over the combined human-Cathar command center, the Aperture. It was the same, absolute silence that had preceded the appearance of the UNS stasis at the beginning of this dreadful partnership. But this time, it was far more pervasive and far more distant. Ambassador Thorne, standing beside a now humbled K.R. watched the main sensor projection. The screen, which normally displayed the dynamic flow of galactic currents, was showing a completely, terrifyingly static field, a perfect geometrical zero point spanning thousands of light-years, located not at the galactic edge, but at the core of an adjacent, spiral-arm galaxy that had previously been populated by a high-level, energetic, and highly volatile civilization known for its rapid expansion. The human physicist, a woman named Dr. Lena Vance, her voice a low, steady monotone, provided the final, terrifying reading. Hegemon Ambassador, the reading is absolute. That entire spiral arm, all known civilizations, all energy signatures, all stellar activity within the localized field has achieved total instantaneous entropic stabilization. The localized laws of thermodynamics within that volume have reached zero. Energy is neither gained nor lost. Nothing can move. Nothing can interact. It is a vast, perfectly preserved, and utterly inert museum of a destroyed reality. K.R.'s breathing hitched, the sound loud in the silent chamber. Stasis, containment. Did they achieve your technology and choose to contain themselves? Thorne shook his head, his face a mask of philosophical resignation. No, they were too late. They chose aggression and expansion over stability and silence, generating too much usable energy, too much chaotic noise in the void. The void patient did not attack them. It simply arrived. Dr. Vance confirmed the residual gravimetric shear. Dr. Vance typed rapidly. Confirmed. We are detecting the faint, tailing echo of an impossibly massive, non-aggressive arrival. The patient passed through that spiral arm and the laws of physics that upheld that reality simply collapsed in its wake. It did not use a weapon. It merely introduced a localized, profound, and absolute end to entropy. It is the end of all possible movement, all possible change, all possible existence. It is the cosmic silence we have been preparing for. The final, sickening revelation came not from the screen, but from Thorne, who placed a calming hand on the hegemon's shoulder. The shock for your hegemony, K.R. was that we removed one dangerous fleet. The larger, shocking secret that we withheld until you were prepped. Read to accept the burden of the truth is this. Humanity did not discover the stasis technology. We inherited it. We are not the first species to achieve this understanding. A former galactic civ.